shift. What we use as definition for subshift. It's something that can be realized as a graph, as a big manifest of the vector.
In one dimension?
Yeah, in one. And what?
In two dimensions, it's a factor of the subshift of finite type. Or equivalently, it's a subshift of finite type obtained through a factor map, which is symbol-wise. So it's a factor of a subshift of finite type, but you can always assume that the subshift of finite type is nearest neighbor, and hence that the factor map is symbol-wise.
Okay, so it's a factor of
in one, you cannot really represent it as a graph.
Okay. But it's for tomorrow.
Okay, but maybe we will speak about this today also. So, but first, last week we saw this undecidability result, which was the tiling with a seed, which means the question is whether we can tile or not with the tile set, or with the SFT, if it's equivalent, but with the constraint that we impose a specific first tile, or a specific central state, or the central state. Okay? And we cannot directly derive the undecidability of the tiling in general. Today we want to prove that the problem the emptiness problem of SFT is undecidable, or the tiling problem, if you prefer, because we saw that an SFT can be represented as a set of tilings defined by a finite tile set. So then it's like I'm giving you some tiles from the puzzle game, the jigsaw puzzle, and I am asking you, will you manage, suppose you have infinitely many of each of these tiles, will you manage to tile the plane or not? Do you have a method to answer this question? And we will see that we don't have this method. Last week we saw that if I impose you to one central tile, then we can prove that it's undecidable by directly simulating space-time diagram of the Rosen or of a Turing machine. Sometimes if you look in the literature, you see directly the proof directly from space-time diagrams of Turing machines. It's really the same as what we do. But why is it very different from here? In the SFT that we built, there is always, it's never empty. There are always many configurations which do not involve the Turing machine head. If we don't impose the central set, then if we don't impose the central set, then there can be tilings. There can be tilings even if the machine halts. So we saw that if the machine halts, or if the cellular automaton reaches a specific state, then we built a SFT whose language did not contain the first step. But if the machine doesn't halt, there is an infinite computation that is encoded in a tiling. But in both cases, there are also tilings which do not involve computation. So you cannot derive this. And it's also not surprising that you cannot derive directly this, because remember that this undecidability result implies that there is an aperiodic SFT. Why? If there were no aperiodic SFT, like was conjectured by Wong when he introduced his formalism for tilings, if there were none, then you know that you always have one of your two semi-algorithms, one which tries to tile as much as possible, and one which tries to find every possible periodic configuration. There is one of the two which will halt at some moment. And so you will always have an answer for this. So if this is undisputable, it means that what I just described is not an algorithm. Why is it not an algorithm? Because there might be a case where both semi-algorithms don't halt, which means that we never find a periodic configuration, and we never find a side of a square that you cannot tile, which means that you have a tiling that tiles the plane, but not periodically. So an aperiodic, non-empty SFT. But from what we saw last week, we cannot derive directly from or prove anything about aperiodicity. We did not do any such thing. So we will do it now by using something that you may have seen in your exercise sheet. So if we have so the first step is what does it mean? I think there are definitions in your exercise sheet, but we can write it. For all x in x, and for all I which is not 0, which is not the vector 0, 0, sigma I of x is different from x. Okay? But imagine you have a subshift which is not empty. We saw in one dimension that what happens for did we saw it? Or was it in an exercise sheet? In every dynamical system, there is a minimal subsystem. In every subshift, in every one-dimensional subshift, there is a minimal subshift. And this is still true in dimension 2. In every two-dimensional subshift, there is, which is not empty, there is a minimal subshift which is not empty. What does it mean? It means it enjoys the same characterization as in 1D. It means that you cannot find a subsystem which is invariant by all the shifts and which is different. Equivalently, it is generated by a configuration which is uniformly recurrent. So it means that every configuration or every tiling of your system has the same language of finite patterns. And uniform recurrence is the notion of, also we talked about hierarchy. there is some kind of hierarchy in the tiling that we did. It's an informal word that I'm saying here, but we'll see what. So in one dimension, what was an example of minimal subshift that we built? We have examples of minimal subshifts which were described through we saw basically two big families of subshifts. The first one is SFT, and maybe in the same family, suffix subshifts. And when there's another family of subshifts, which was very different, which were built by substitutions. And in one dimension, substitutive subshifts give very nice examples of minimal subshifts, provided that you try to satisfy some conditions, that the substitution is not too stupid to make something periodic. But otherwise, if the substitution is pure primitive, you get something minimal. And these two families of subshifts are pretty much disjoint, because in SFT we saw that all minimal subsystems were periodic orbits, because you see SFT on graphs, and there is always one periodic orbit. So a minimal SFT is just one periodic orbit. So an SFT is never a substitutive subshift, except in the very degenerate case where the two of them are one periodic orbit in dimension 1. And it's the same for subshifts. Sophic and substitutive subshift do not intersect. There are two different classes, essentially, except for triviality. In one dimension, in two dimensions, we will see that substitutive subshift, many substitutive subshifts are cyclic. So what do I mean by many substitutive? I mean the definition that you have in the exercise sheet. So imagine a 2x2 substitution. So you have a map kappa from A to A 2 times 2, and at each symbol it maps 4 symbols that I put like this. Why do I put them like this? Because I want to say that I want to extend this kappa to all possible patterns. Let's say rectangle patterns. You can and so here we cannot really speak about homomorphism of semi-group like in 1D. This notion is less robust than in 1D. But still, when the image of every letter is a rectangle, you see that you can replace every letter by a rectangle. You all see what I'm doing. I'm putting the image of each symbol consecutively and in the correct order with so it's not really the concatenation. I mean, it's a concatenation, but we have to be careful on how to put things. It's obvious when it's rectangles, but you could imagine substitution. There are a larger notion of substitution where you don't have only rectangles, and then you have to say how to glue things when you consider them. So, maybe an example. If I do something like 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1 is 1, 1, 1, 0. This is a nice substitution because in the image of every letter, I have every letter. By the same argument as in 1D, you can deduce that the two-dimensional subshifts will be minimal. So let's see some iterations of this. You correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm iterating the image of 0. So after one step I have this. After 2 steps maybe something like this. Maybe there is an error.
Yes, it should be 0 at the bottom second from right. It should be not all ones, but 1 is 0.
But I think second from the bottom and second from right. The right side. Yep.
Thank you.
But that doesn't really matter.
Well, it does. It's the only error.
Let's check.
Well,
Okay.
not that I can see other one.
So, by the way, you see, if you look at each column and each line, it's quite regular. It's nice. So sometimes you have periods.
I think also the. Oh no, yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so you can do the next step on your sheet of paper. Now, why did I want to draw this? I want to show that the subshift that is associated to the substitution, you remember that is a subshift where every allowed pattern, the subshift of all configuration whose patterns can be seen in the iteration of some starting from some method. But actually, since it's primitive, I can start from 0 always, because all patterns from 1 will be seen also in the iteration from 0. So if I continue to do this, I will see all patterns that I allow in my subsheet. And so, in some sense, because it's minimal, another way to see this is that the infinite tiling that I get like this will generate a subsheet in the sense that all configurations will be taken, will be infinite shifts of the ones that I draw. What do I mean by infinite shifts? I mean limit points of shifts. So there will be configurations where I see every pattern that I see appears here. So let's see why this is so big. This is maybe one of the hardest results in the. It's probably the hardest thing in the course, and maybe you won't see it at once. And of course, this is also the results where the color charts will be problematic. You're smarter than me. I could have done something since the time, but that's about. So, what makes you know that such a pattern is in the subsheet or not? As a human being, what are you doing to check this? Well, more or less, you do what I started to do here. You cut squares. You try to see if there is a grid which matches, and then you try to see if there is a bigger grid which matches, and you check that. Okay, this could be the second image of 0, and this could be the second image of 1. It's okay, 1 can appear on top of 0, but then if 1 appears on top of 0, it means that the big pattern that they form is the third image of 0. So this represents the third image of 0, and maybe the next pattern that should be here should be a 1, because on the right of a 0 I always have 1, etc. So we have first to so now all of this reasoning that all of these arguments that I've just done, we have to be able to tell the tiles themselves to do it, to check themselves. So we have to put some information locally, which will correspond to the decorations of the suffix subsheet, so that they can check locally whether you are really in the subsheet or not. Remember that so a suffix subsheet is a subsheet which is obtained by a subsheet of finite type and by a projection of alphabet at each level independently. Another way of seeing this, the dual way of seeing this is I have my subsheet and I can add decorations with my color chart, thank you, such that these decorations will help me to, will be used in local constraints. Will help me to define forbidden patterns. So maybe one information that we can start to put everywhere is the position of each cell in the grid. So maybe I can say that I always number this like this for positions. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a decoration that I can add, and it's interesting because it will force. It's easy then to force each line to alternate 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, and then every pattern should have shape, decomposition in grids into one grid of 2 by 2. And inside this grid, I can also, for example, pattern 0, 0, 0, 0, with 4 zeros. Of course, these are neighbors, so they can know that they can be 4 zeros, because I know from the first step of the application of the substitution that 0, 0, 0, 0 will not appear. Maybe from the second step, because we have to check that it doesn't appear. Okay? So, at some point, we can easily show that maybe the first step, kappa of a to the z square is the peak. So I said that kappa you can extend it to every rectangle pattern, but you can also extend it in the trivial way to a to the z square. Okay, but this is not a subshift, so what I said is a bit wrong. Maybe I want to put the orbit by sigma. Okay? If you apply a substitution 2 by 2, to a shift invariant set, then the set is no more shift invariant. It's invariant by a shift by 2. So kappa of S, kappa of sigma ij of X is sigma 2I 2j of kappa of X. Do you see what? Do you understand what it is? So here, if I apply, imagine you have an infinite configuration, and I apply kappa, then here I have at L0, I have the map, I have the image of 0, but it takes for a block of 2 by 2. So, at cell 2, 0, I start to write the image of 1. You see, so it's not shift invariant. It's not a factor map. The substitution is not a factor map. It doesn't preserve the shift, but it will quickly preserve the shift in the sense that it's in this sense. And the 2 here, of course, comes from it.
And we said substitution not to 2 by 2 squares, but as it would be
yes.
Like 3.
Yes. That's exactly what I was saying the moment you were So these two comes from the dimensions here, of course. But if I take the orbit by the shift, then I get I don't even need to take the closure. Why? Because the orbit by the shift, you remember, it's the union of image of the shift. But since we have this, equality, then the union of all shifts is just the union of 4 shifts. So we have the union of finitely many closed sets, which is closed, and it should be there. So it's a subshift. And what I'm claimed is that this kind of decoration with the numbers plus a quick check between cells number 1, 2, 3, and 4, that they have a coherent white layer in the middle, which can be done locally, it's a local constraint. This proves that this is Sophic. Okay, you see more or less what we are doing. So with just this decoration, what I call the decoration here is the blue number, which is just a finite information that I left at each cell. Then I can tell every cell independently to check by themselves, and thanks to their neighbors, their direct neighbors, that they correspond to a valid image of some configuration by kappa. So I don't know if this is clear. The image set of by kappa of a set configuration is quite simple. It's just something, a drawing, which is a concatenation by a concatenation of these two patterns and aligned correctly. Okay? It's much more complicated to prove that the substitutive subshift itself is Sophic. Of course, the substitutive subshift could be more or less corresponds to the decorations that you do with kappa to the square, kappa to the 3, kappa to the 4th, but I cannot add infinitely many information at each cell, because then I will get an infinite dataset. We don't want this. We want really Sophicity with finitely many decorations at each cell. So to make it even clearer, to make things even clearer about this issue, I can also add to the center of the cell, of the 4 cells, here, I can add the letter which it was a pre-image of. Okay? So now the 4 cells can clearly check, okay, am I the second cell in the image of 0? Yes. Okay, everything is okay. And is my neighbor the first cell, and my neighbor the 4th cell, and my neighbor on the right, is it the first cell of something? Okay. Now how are we going to do to check in the next level, to check locally the next level? Maybe what we want to do is something like this. So of course I cannot add what I said before. If we want to keep the final alphabet, we cannot add everywhere the letter which represents this block. We cannot add the information everywhere. But you see that in some sense, in my way of drawing the thing, there is some kind of space left here that we can use. It doesn't mean anything what I just said, space left, because I'm expanding the alphabet. What I mean by there is some space left is that there is this representation on Blackboard, and if I manage to write things in some space on the Blackboard, and each symbol has a lower bounded size, then it's a good sign that the construction will have finite information at each position. But here, for example, if I put the symbol of which is the second image in the center here, here, and here. Okay? So maybe also what I can do is also put numbers to these cells here. The first step, yes. So the white, let's call it the zero step. And the first yellow that I wrote, let's call it the first step. And in the first step, I also want to situate them in the next level, in the image in the next level. So this is 1, 1, this is 0, 2, and this is 0, 3, and this is 1, 4. Of course, it's starting to be quite messy on the Blackboard. But you understand what I'm doing? In some sense, we have, it seems to be like I'm adding some information, but maybe we can say that we are in this alphabet, A prime equals 1 index 1, 0 index 2, 1 index 3, 0 index 3, and 1 index 4. Okay. So you have only 5 letters. So all of my word letters can be seen in this alphabet. And actually all of my yellow letters will also be seen in this alphabet. But I'm claiming that this I will not make this alphabet grow more. And this is important for our construction work. Okay? But then this one here is not directly linked to this 0 in some sense. So maybe you say that this is the first step, so maybe this tile is specific, and you can say that this one touches this 0 through one tile. But imagine in the next step, in the next level, maybe this could be unbounded. So we have to communicate between this level this level so that they check that it's a valid image. So let me draw like this. When I wrote in yellow the first image of each block in yellow, I wrote it in the center, but you have to understand it as being an information which is present in all of the internal sides of the blocks. So this side has a color 1, index 1. This side has a color 1, index 1. This 1, index 1. In the second step, it's the same. The central 0 that I put here is actually present in all these internal sides, but internal for level 2, not going inside the level 1 blocks, because this would imply maybe some growth of the some unbounded information at some places. But here, in this side, I can transfer this information of this central cell. This is interesting because here you see that there is some communication. Okay? So I can check that I know that this is the left arm of this 0. And I can check that the two things that go. So, of course, I'm not drawing everything. I want you to get the intuition, but maybe to have the exact formalization of the SFT that projects to this is very hard. In particular, these arms, I draw them yellow. You understood that they have the information of the 0, so it's like having 0 everywhere here. And they also know in which direction they are going. There are some arrows. Okay. And here you have two arrows that face each other and go into one big arrow. And here we can check, because the arrows hold the information here, 1, 1 and 0, 2. And so the guy is happy because it's at position 1 of the image of 0, I have a 1. And at position 2 of the image of 0, I have a 0. So it's correct. At this level, here, there is a check. These local constraints here will help us check that I have exactly mapped the correct first column. And the same here and here. At the next level, of course, so just a remark also, these big arms that I put thicker, and this big 0, they are not a distinct symbols. I put them thicker so that we understand on the drawing, but they are the same symbol as here so that the alphabet doesn't grow. That's why I'm correcting it here. So here, no, actually this 0 had an index 1. This one had an index, no, sorry, this 0 had an index 4. This one had an index 3, 2, 1. And the next image can check here, and here, and here, and here, that these 4 big blocks represent 4 letters that are in the image of the letter that it carries. So if we decorate our configuration like this, to define the decorations of the subsheet, it's enough to define the decorations on one configuration because we saw that it was minimal. And so all the patterns appear here. So now I obtain, basically what I have defined is an alphabet. The alphabet of the SFT is not this one. Here I talked about A prime as a first step to change the substitution, but so the alphabet of the subsheet that we get is something with one symbol in the middle and possibly symbols in the corners and arrows in the sides. But the symbols in the middle and in the corners are all in this alphabet, and the arrows also are all in this alphabet. They have a direction and they hold something in this alphabet. So the alphabet is finite. It comes with very natural constraints that I impose sides to match each other, etc. So if I have this configuration, I can define the forbidden patterns. Maybe I take this configuration and I look at something that maybe 3 is enough. All patterns of size 3 by 3 in this configuration. Now I define my subshift of my type as the subshift where I forbid all the patterns that I don't see as a pattern of size 3 by 3 in this picture. This is the subshift of finite type. It includes my configuration, so I know that since it includes this configuration, I know that the projection, which is defined by removing the decorations, contains my substitutive subshift. So kappa, or maybe yes, B is the alphabet, B is the alphabet projection, which corresponds to removing the decoration. So I just keep the white layer, everything which is in white. You agree that it's a symbol white factor. So pi of x includes S kappa, the substitutive subshift. Now we have to prove that the contrary, that every configuration in pi of x is obtained as a limit of shifts from this picture. It's not really obvious. Do you see why it's true? Maybe it's not true because I forgot one decoration, but we will see it together. Number 3. Consider the configuration, the tiling of X. So it's something. So we said that all the 3x3 patterns should be something that looks like this. So in particular, you know, the first thing, you know that you will get 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You get alternation of the symbols. And 3, 4, 3, 4. I'm talking about the indices in the center of each cell. They have to follow some alternation like this because this is something which is fixed only by nearest neighbor constraints, and we saw that it's satisfied by every configuration, by everywhere in this picture. So if we have a configuration whose all 3x3 patterns appear in this picture, they must satisfy this. And if they are like this, then if they are like this, then we know that there is a letter in the middle of each 4x4 you have. So in some sense, directly from this, we know that the configurations from capital X can be decomposed in some 2x2 blocks. And they can see themselves that, oh, okay, we four are together. Okay, so we should represent some image of, I'm stupid, I have this. Okay, you remember. We should represent some image of something. So here I have a letter A, and here I have this must be the image of A. Here I have a letter B. Okay, but these letters, they are in this new alphabet also, so they should have indices. For example, B should have maybe index 1. But here, B meets, there is a place where it communicates with F. Because remember that these arms, they hold the letter which they come from. So all of these arrows, they actually hold the letter B1. B1 is written here. I don't write it everywhere, but B1 is written in the arrow everywhere. Okay? And here I have F something, but if it's allowed here, this something has to be free, because something index 1 cannot communicate vertically with something else than 3. So F has index 3, and here it's the same. This 2, 4. Okay. So in some sense, we have forced at the next level to have some kind of grid appearing. Every configuration in X has also a grid at the next level. But better than this, when these two meet, not only they have a number 1, 3 or 2, 4 when they meet vertically, but also they check that they are the correct image of the arrow which has to go left, by the way. There should be an arrow going left. If you have a 1 arrow and a 3 arrow which meet like this, then they should have consecutive arrows going left, which hold the name of a letter, maybe called H, and maybe the letter is alpha. So here, this holds letter alpha, and here, these people, they see that these two letters alpha go here, and there is a 1 and a 3 communicating. So this B1 and this F3 should be the left column of the image of alpha. And here, this should be the first line, the top line. This B1 and C2 must be the top line of the image of alpha, etc. So what have we forced? We have forced this is just to show you, it's not part of the decoration. We have proposed this big pattern, B, C, F, G, to be the image of the letter alpha. But the reasoning that we've just done in level 2 works exactly the same at each level. Because alpha also has an index, let's say I, and it's carried by the arrows. Okay, and here it means something else. The image of a big block which was, so we have, up to now we know that all 4x4 blocks, we have a grid of 4x4 blocks which represent the double image of some symbol. But there is some coherence because here they meet and they check that they are in the image of something at the next level. So this big 8x8 block will also be the third image of something. So we started by saying that we have something where we have only the local constraints that are satisfied here, and we proved that all the patterns, when we project them by forgetting the decoration, they appear in some iteration of kappa from some letter. Which means that phi of x equals x inverse kappa. I know this is not very, very formal. I know you probably did not completely really understood every detail, but I hope you got some kind of intuition of what's going on. What's going on is that we have forced some kind of hierarchy of grids just by local constraints, which was completely impossible in one dimension, simply because when you have some hierarchy, for example, what I call a hierarchy is basically the blocks of every level given by iterations of the substitutions, for instance. When you have such kind of hierarchy, in one dimension, you may have very big blocks which cannot communicate in some sense together, because if every level communicates with its neighbors, then at some point you have to have an infinite information going through the one-dimensional channel. But here, the second dimension gives us enough room to have every level communicating to check that we have a valid hierarchy encoded. If you're not sure to have fully understand, first you can ask questions. Second, there are many constructions in the literature that do more or less the same, and that are not all very readable. But, for example, one pretty much known aperiodic tiling is the Robinson tiling, which dates back from 1971, I think. Robinson built a simple aperiodic tiling which corresponds to you forget about the substitution. In the substitution, you just have the indices 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't care about the letters, but you build this infinite grid, and it's enough to get something aperiodic. He doesn't present it at all like this, but it corresponds to the same idea. So why did we get an aperiodic tiling, by the way, an aperiodic SFT? Because it factors onto a substitutive tiling, substitutive subsheet, and substitutive subsheet, a primitive substitutive subsheet with minimal and aperiodic. And phi is a factor map, so it should preserve periodic configurations. The image of a periodic configuration by a factor map, it's the same, we saw it in one dimension. It's still true in two dimensions because it's triple set theoretic argument. The image of a periodic configuration is periodic. And so if X has a periodic configuration, then xk would also have one. Do you see more or less why there is no periodic configuration also here? Just from this drawing, without talking about primitivity, but it's actually the same idea. But you can see it. Imagine there is a period in one configuration, so let's say this period. It's actually a problem because we know that a pattern of this size, bigger than the period, should be included in a very big block which appears in the substitutive, as an image of the substitution. And since we have indices, each block has an index which is different from its neighbor, then it makes a contradiction for the period. Okay, I didn't, okay. This was not very formal. It's just to give you an idea, but you can write it very formally at home. It's not so hard when you have it. When you have a primitive, non-trivial substitution. So now we are not so far from proving undecidability of the emptiness of SFT, which is the second very hard result of the course. So when we simulated a computation in the substitution, we simulated Turing machine computation. We presented it last week through cellular automata, but actually a cellular automaton that simulates a Turing machine. There is essentially one head which does some modifications, and the rest is not modified. So if you do this kind of simulation of Turing machine, there will also always be some, when you take a limit, there will always be very big patterns where the head doesn't appear, and which means you have any pattern which is vertically constant. And if you have arbitrarily big patterns where the head does not appear, by compactness, you have a configuration where the head does not appear. So if you want to prove the understandability of the domino problem, you want to embed computation a bit everywhere in the configuration. I don't know if you have a, more or less, if you have the intuition of this. If you want to embed computation in SFT, and you want it to appear a bit everywhere, because if you have a big part where nothing occurs, and which is arbitrarily big, you can extract by compactness a configuration where nothing occurs, and then you will not control it in your construction. So how can we do something like the embedding of a Turing machine, but a bit everywhere in the configuration? We will precisely use an aperiodic SFT. So, if I draw the same picture as here, but if I draw the one like corners like this, the two like corners like this, and the three like corners like this, four like corners like this, then what I get is a sequence of squares like this, and the squares this looks more like Robinson's pictures. So I have arbitrarily big squares. Maybe, I don't know, one big square here. Okay, so this picture is extracted from this by translating the 1, 2, 3, 4s into corners, and the arrows transmitting the corners into straight lines. But by modifying now so first thing that I will want you to believe me is that this works for every rectangle substitution, even bigger rectangles. Sometimes this theorem is attributed to Moses. It was in 1989, I think. But the ideas were already present in Robinson and in Berger. Berger is the first one to have built mentality subsheets. So now, if you apply this theorem to kappa 2, to the same substitution as before but squared, of course I get the same subsheet, so it's a bit stupid. But now I apply it to kappa composed with kappa prime, where kappa and kappa prime are 2 by 2, obtained by one another. Equal, but on different alphabets. So I take the substitution before, but I consider the alphabet where I'm going to as a different alphabet, and kappa prime goes back to A. So it's a complicated, more complicated than what I really want to do. What I really want to do is to say that I can color. Maybe I shouldn't have started by this one.
Can you repeat how it's connected to the Turing machine?
I didn't say it yet. So we want, no, precisely, we want to have, you will see.
Okay.
What I did. Yes, thank you. We want to have, what I'm trying to do is to draw a picture on a subject sheet to force us, I want to build a suffix subsheet where every configuration has arbitrarily large squares, and in these squares I will use them to put space-time diagram of Turing machines. Why do I want to do this? Because so if I okay, so yes, I have planned to say it later. But first, I want to have something with arbitrarily large squares. So I have it directly from here, but I want to have disjoint squares, non-intersecting squares. This is why I take only 1 square over 2. One level over 2, sorry. By using this kind of composition, I can color the first level in white, the second level in blue, the third level in white, the fourth level in blue, and so the squares never intersect each other. And this is interesting because in each square, let's say in each white square, I will run a computation. So I will so a way of seeing this is to reduce the tiling with seed that we saw last week. Imagine you have an FFT with so imagine you have an algorithm that decides whether an FFT is empty or not, tiles the plane or not. Then I will build an algorithm which contradicts the result of last week. An algorithm which tells whether an FFT with a given tile tiles the plane. So if you give me a tiling, an FFT and a central cell, I build an FFT such that your FFT tiles with this central cell, even if my FFT tiles at all. How am I doing this? So I'm using the second chart. So yes, I will put in yellow the blue corners here. I will put them in yellow. And I add a layer with your FFT so that I'm wondering if it tiles with a given tile. I'm putting it here, but I assume it respects the constraint of your FFT only inside white squares. And in the yellow point, I force your tile to be on top of your okay. Another way to see it is in all of these white squares, I start a Turing machine computation here. What does it mean? I start a Turing machine computation. We saw it last week. We can easily simulate cellular automata, which simulate Turing machines. So the space-time diagram of a Turing machine is given by local constraints. Okay, but I don't require. So I extend my alphabet with a head of the Turing machine and with symbols of state, and I require this corner here to be the initial state of the Turing machine, and all of this line to be the empty state. And then I require inside this square to satisfy the rules of the Turing machine. And I forbid the halting state. So if the machine reaches the halting state, then it has no possible extension, so actually all of the tiling doesn't exist. Okay? So here I have little white squares. So if the machine halts in less than time, okay, if it corresponded to this picture, then these squares are 2 by 2. But let's say that I'm at some, I look at my picture at some level and I have a square of size n. If the Turing machine halts before time n, then then I don't have a way to extend this little square, so the tiling doesn't exist. But if it has after time n, then maybe this square can be extended. But a bigger square will not. The important thing is that arbitrarily large computation can be embedded in my picture. Because here I will also have a computation involved in this square. There is one technical thing that I will not insist too much on. The computation here that goes into this picture will be annoyed by this actually, by the smaller squares that are inside. So what we do is that we know that this square can use only some lines and some columns that do not contain squares. So this big square will start the computation only using these lines and columns which do not intersect the smaller squares that also perform their computation on their own. But the important remark, if you compute by induction the number of free rows and columns, by induction you see that it can also be made exponential. So the squares, white squares, have unbounded rows and columns that don't intersect smaller squares. So white squares of level n have something like 2 to the n free rows and columns. And of course, then to represent the space-time diagram of Turing machine starting an empty input this can also be forced by local constraints. So there is this technicality about knowing that you are free row or column, but apart from this, it's easy to simulate space-time diagrams. We forbid the halting state. So, if the machine has after some time t, there is a square where the number of rows and columns is bigger than t. of level n, such that f of n is bigger than p, and this square, this white square cannot be tied because if we start to tie it, I force the space-time diagram. At some point, I will get the halting state, and I forbid it. But this white square of level n appears in every configuration of when we in the square layer. This is the computation layer. In the square layer, it appears in every configuration. So now, if the machine doesn't halt, it's easy to describe. You take this infinite tying that you have on the square layer, and you put the start of the infinite configuration starting from nth input. So the subsheet is not empty. Okay, so this is a reduction from the halting problem, but we also know that there is one machine which is universal. What is the similar result here? There is one machine. So instead of starting with any machine over nth input and not knowing whether it halts or not, there exists one machine, fixed machine, and you never know if you are given the input, you never know whether it halts or not. And if you embed this universal machine in this construction, you get one SFT. Such that the extension problem is unfavorable, which means if you are given one pattern, you are given a pattern, even a pattern which is horizontal, because the computation of the machine will be like this. So imagine you have the encoding of something, of the input of the machine. You don't know, you cannot know with any algorithm whether this input will give you a halting computation or not. And it's the same here. You have this pattern, and you don't know if you will extend it to a configuration or not. So said differently, the language of X is undecidable. The language is the set of finite patterns. So you have a set of configurations which is defined by forbidding finitely many patterns. So it's very simple. You just, it looks very, very computable. You just say, okay, I don't have 1, 1 and 1, 0, but the set of finite patterns that is defined is undecidable. It was quick. I know it was quite quick because the results that are not so easy, but if you fully understand already what Sophie subshifts are and how you can do constructions like what is asked in the exercise sheet, it helps a lot to understand these constructions, like decorations, layers, products of alphabets, and local constraints. These are things that you need to get intuition on to fully understand what all of these constructions mean. Any question? I have one question which is independent. We talked about exam on the 6th, and on the 6th it's quite we first said that we would keep it at the same time, but it makes some quite short exam, and it's know if it really reflect what you need. Just in 1 hour and a half, it's quite short, and I discussed with the organizers of the university, and they agreed with me that maybe it's quite short, so maybe either we find a bigger slot, either you stay later or you come earlier, or we find a slot on the other day, or if you prefer, we can also do something with an exercise sheet at home for the last week. I think it can be nice because this is a course which is not so easy. So in any case, I think it can be. It's not a problem to allow you to look into references and everything if you show on the answers of the tasks that you really understood what you're doing. So what do you prefer? I don't know. Or maybe you want to think about this and tell me tomorrow. We'll discuss about this tomorrow.
We can do base the exam by homework.
Yes.
It's difficult to make an exam on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, that's another possibility. But then it would be previous one, that's the third of November.
So Guillon is planned on the 6th of November.
Yes.
It's Tuesday, and the 3rd and the 4th is the weekend before.
For me, homework is actually heavy. We can vote or something.
Sorry, you can?
We can choose by voting.
We can vote.
Yeah.
Tomorrow? We can vote?
Can you send a letter to everyone attending to decide what is the best option for?
I can. The question is whether you can answer to my email because in the beginning of the semester, my attempts to vote on things were not very successful. So, and now we have to decide quite rapidly. So I can definitely send an email.
With all the options. Yep.
But if people don't vote, I don't know what I.
Well, if people don't vote, we can assume that they are fine with anything, actually.
But for the organization of the courses, it was not the case. Many people didn't vote, and they actually had. But anyway, yes, you can try. So basically two possibilities then. Saturday or homework, because I cannot give all possibilities in the week, because everything is possible during the week, I don't know, for me at least, but for you, usually not.
Well,
I prefer homework.
moving timetable is always complicated thing, so I don't know. I'm fine with anything, but for others,
You prefer homework? You prefer what?
whatever. I probably can do 7 homework, so it doesn't matter.
What do you prefer?
It's more special
Okay.
Because?
because everybody can participate and people have some like business social like other